Okay, I think we're about ready to start. We'll get going with the webinar. Thank you everyone for joining. It's a real pleasure to speak with you this morning. What we wanted to do today was to describe to you or walk you through some of the trends we're seeing around hybrid working that is specific to local authorities. And so what we wanted to do today was first of all introduce a little bit about us, but really get into the topic of what is hybrid working, how are local authorities embracing these new changes in ways of working, and what type of strategies could be implemented for property and estates to optimize the workplace moving forwards. We'll have a Q&A towards the end, so please do feel free to add any questions or any comments into the chat box as we go through, and I'll also have a chance to discuss and explore those questions when we get through to the end of the session. So first of all, a little bit about us. Matrix Booking, we are a software services provider who are one of the leading workplace management systems in the public sector. Our system was first released over 10 years ago, and we have won a number of industry awards throughout those years, as well as having a commitment to information security and servicing our central government and local authority and NHS customers. In terms of who we work with today, we have over 50% of our customers in the UK public sector, ranging from central government and hub operators, such as the GPA, HMRC and Ministry of Justice, right through to many different public sector and government tenants, as well as key departments of state, local government and local authorities, NHS and other health service providers, and finally education and charity, as well as a number of customers in the private and commercial sectors. Now, one of the things that we are quite well known for is our ability to support the UK government hub networks, and that's certainly going to be a topic for this morning's session, exploring how public sector workplace is evolving and how the sharing of spaces within shared community hubs, commuter hubs and government hubs is really revolutionising the way the civil service is really responding to these new ways of working. So we'll be sharing some learnings and understanding that we've had through working with our customers through this morning's session. Now, this webinar is one of a series we've been conducting up and down the country for the past 18 or so months, what we call the Hybrid and Hubs series. Now, this is a selection of in-person events and also some virtual broadcasts like this one this morning, where we were engaging with various organisations across the public sector, wanting to really understand what does hybrid working mean for them and how are they adapting to shared spaces and the use of hubs moving forwards. And so we're delighted this morning to share with you some of the learning we've had from these many conversations we've had over the past 18 or so months. And we've been very privileged to have a very diverse range of panelists throughout these discussions. More recently in Manchester, this was the last in-person event we did in the series, where we had members from the Government Property Agency, UKHSA and the DWP, as well as local authorities in Blackburn with Darwen and Essex County Council, as well as West Yorkshire Police. So a very diverse range of opinions coming with a variety of different solutions to the challenges we're all finding around how do we provide the best type of workplace and property and estate strategy moving forwards. And so what did we find through these conversations? Well, as a brief summary, if you like, of the key takeaways, really hybrid working is a moving target. It's a constant experiment. That was one of the panelists' phrases there. It's very much trying to understand what is going on by asking our people and reviewing other key performance indicators to see how we are performing as an organisation. We're only really at the point now of evaluating our progress so far. The idea of workplace since the lockdowns has come on so significantly, and organisations and buildings are still adapting to the radical changes in the way we work. Of course, there is no one size fits all. Every organisation is different, and that requires different solutions. That was clear when we had different types of organisations on the various panels, whether they were central government, local authority, NHS trusts, or perhaps other blue light services, around what they were doing in response to the new ways of working and how they were adapting their organisation accordingly. Throughout the dialogue, we heard time and again that the engagement with staff was fundamental to success. There was this conversation around, are we imposing what we want, or are we engaging with our colleagues, asking them what they need, and having that proactive type of dialogue and discussion. So that was a very interesting component to the conversation. There was also very good points made around what is the purpose of the office, and where is that purposeful intent around coming in. We now have a choice of how and where we work in many cases, and so the office needs to have a reason to come in, whether that's a collaboration with team members, whether that's some form of in-person engagements or training, meeting colleagues, team building, etc. So it's clear that the role of the office is very important going forwards, but is perhaps different to what we perceived it as prior to the pandemic. The topic of the Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday was clear through many of the discussions, and different solutions are needed to address this. Obviously, this is a very much an emerging requirement. Again, something that if people choose how and where they work, this is where the occupancy tends to land. So how do we solve this problem? Is this, for example, having things like anchor days, where we encourage departments to come in on one of the Mondays and Fridays per month to try to spread the load of the building or buildings and property, so that we can have maximum occupancy across the entire working week. Of course, the more data we understand, the more we can start to look at where we are and where we're going. And as the old saying goes, what you can't measure, you can't manage. I think that in workplace, there's such radical change ongoing right now. The more quantitative the occupancy data and qualitative data, such as surveys asking our people how they feel about the workplace, what they need moving forwards, the more information we have, the better informed we are to take those key decisions moving forwards. And my favourite takeaway from this session was a comment that the panelists had said around, can we make the office a magnet rather than a mandate? And for me, that goes to the heart of what makes a successful hybrid working strategy moving forwards. We want to make the office a hub of collaboration and a hive of activity where people want to come in, as opposed to perhaps being forced in, the carrot and stick analogy, if you will. And so that, for me, is a key question of how do we achieve this moving forwards, that we see across the public sector as well as in the commercial and private sectors as well. So taking that concept slightly forward, so I mean, this was obviously something that probably many of you would have seen a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, where this is one end of that spectrum, magnet or mandate, and obviously leadership have a chance to decide, if you like, what type of approach they would like around returning to the office and use of the spaces accordingly. In fact, there's many stories in the press around what the private sector are doing. I mean, some of you might have seen what the policies are for the likes of Tesla, where Elon Musk is very anti-home working, so that if you're going to work from home, you're doing it after you've spent 40 hours in the office. And that's really driven by the fact that they're an engineering company building cars, and you can't build cars from home. So very strong on that side, where if your badge into the building isn't swiped 5 days a week across a month, an automated email goes to your line manager and HR. So very one strong end of the mandate spectrum, right through to the other end, and there's countless examples in the private sector and in the public sector around the use of the office as a magnet, something attractive that people want to come into, providing them something that they can't get at home, that in-person collaboration, that meet and greet, the type of facilities and equipment we have within the office to facilitate these functions. So that's really going to be the heart of what we'll be exploring this morning. How do we make hybrid working work in so many words? So how do we understand what the benefits of hybrid working? How do we look to unlock the potential we have with these new ways of working? I mean, first of all, hybrid working does improve productivity. And studies have shown that hybrid working can lead to increased productivity. For example, some remote workers have seen more control over how and where they work, and that gives them reduced distractions perhaps and reduces their commute time. And all of these are factors that can help improve focus and positively impact on their output. There's also the work-life balance, I think, that comes into play here. Hybrid working does allow people to have a bit better balance of their work and their life. They can reclaim the valuable time that they might have lost through commuting to spend time with family or perhaps hobbies or self-care without affecting their career growth. So there is a real strong wellness factor when it comes to choosing how and where you work. And this is leading to improved employee satisfaction and retention rates. Hybrid working does enable employees the flexibility of that balance. It does lead to improved job satisfaction, or at least that's what the research tends to show, and it contributes to higher employee retention rates and overall well-being. Of course, there are cost savings as well for both the employee and the employer. The employee can save on the commuting expenses and other office-related costs, such as going out for lunch or whatever services need to be purchased as a result of those trips. Employers can look to reduce the cost of their real estate by right-sizing the portfolio, optimizing their offices based upon what they actually need. And the final point is around perhaps reducing the carbon footprint. By decreasing commuting and office-related energy consumption, that does have an impact on our carbon footprint and sustainability goals. The optimization of the estate can lead to a smaller, greener, and more efficient portfolio. And this is particularly important as we're approaching the net zero regulations with the EPC commercial ratings. This is a key factor for looking to perhaps use this as an opportunity to exit older buildings that perhaps have a very poor energy efficiency rating and look to move into newer property which perform much better from an energy sustainability perspective. Interestingly, with the EPC ratings, a recent study was released that showed that almost 78% of the existing buildings in London will be illegal to let by 2030, given the fact that they are not achieving an A star, an A or a B EPC rating. So this factor is causing a significant amount of a change in the private and commercial sectors as organisations are seizing the initiative, saying that we need less space but better quality and smaller buildings that are greener and more energy efficient moving forwards there. So 5 very strong factors for benefits to the organisation and employees as a whole around hybrid working. So I wanted to delve a little bit more into some of the research that we've seen over the recent past. It's very clear that the ways of working have changed significantly as a result of the pandemic and the enforced home working over the lockdowns. This data point from Advanced Workplace Associates was very interesting because they've been doing surveys for a number of years prior to the pandemic and had a wealth of data to leverage when they looked at the change in working ways. So typically before COVID, we would be attending the office as many as almost 4 days out of 5, with one of the 5 days being perhaps we're away from the office, we're on holiday, we're on leave, we're maybe at home or meeting a customer, supplier or partner. But the shift has been so significant post-COVID. They're really struggling to get to 1.5 days in the office, and that's based upon actual attendance data that's been recorded. So a real shift in terms of the demand for workplace as a whole. And this is leading to a significant shift in how the office is used across the week. Now, typically pre-pandemic, you would have found Friday being a slightly quieter day, but not as quiet as what we're now seeing with new ways of working. You can see the clear Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday peak there. That is where the majority of people are coming in, and that is perhaps creating a bit of momentum. More people are in the office, more people to engage with, more people they want to join. Now the challenge becomes, how do we try to spread the jam, if you like, across the whole slice of toast that we have here? How do we try to get people in more on a Monday and a Friday? And this is a very much an open discussion right now within workplace. Do we do things like free coffees or subsidised lunches and whatnot as more of a carrot, or do we perhaps have things like anchor days where we want to encourage departments to come in on one Friday a month to try to make best use of the space during that time? I think that there's a range of solutions being tried and tested, so it'll be very interesting to see what is successful to try to solve this challenge, because no one wants to be paying for a building 7 days a week and only using it 3 days a week. That's a pretty poor return on investment. So having a good balance, I think, would be something that many organisations are looking to achieve there. And so when we talk about balance, how do we get that right between home and office working, I should say? And this was a recent survey by OnePoll on behalf of an organisation that was exploring the thoughts and comments around office workers across the UK. This was across sectors, I should say. So when they were asked, what do you like about hybrid working? What they really enjoyed was less time commuting, better balance of their home and work life, as well as feeling more productive and having a positive impact on their mental health and well-being. These were clear advantages. But when they were asked what's perhaps the drawbacks around hybrid working, they said that there was a feeling of disconnection. They didn't feel like they were interacting as much face to face, and there were perhaps a poor setup at home, for example, didn't have the features in the office, and the communication was a little bit more challenging. Perhaps more emphasis on instant messaging and emails, feeling a bit fatigued around constant digital communication. Zoom fatigue was a term that's been used in the past. So how do we get the balance between these two? That's really how hybrid working can work really well. Having the home and the office both being used, where the office can be used to create and sustain those relationships within our teams and outside of our organisation, that can be then sustained online. And that is really where organisations can start to have that balance between home and office working. And so, when we're using the office, it's very important for us to consider what type of activities do we need to support. If we are asking people to come into the office to spend all day on Teams calls because everyone else is at home, that's not a great use of the space, not a great use of the people's time and effort and energy it takes to get into the office. And so we want to avoid this concept of commuter regret, where I've come in, I've travelled in, paid for my train maybe, spent an hour and a half, got to the office, no one's there. And someone said to me recently, no one goes to a bad restaurant twice. So if that's your experience, it's going to be very difficult to get that person back again. So we have to start thinking ahead and being more proactive around what do we want the office for? What are we encouraging in terms of behaviours within our teams across our departments, so that people have a fulfilling experience within the office when they're there. And these are the types of activities that the respondents in this survey were alluding to. Having in-person interactions with your manager or your team, spending time with new people, training them up, really networking, and that is for me, the secret sauce around what makes an organisation successful. It's often the in-person meeting, but more often than not, it's been the chat you have just before the meeting, or maybe just after the meeting in the corridor or by the coffee bar. That's really where the value is, the so-called water cooler moments. I've learned a tremendous amount with former colleagues of mine where I've had that discussion after a meeting. What did you mean by that? And what was your perspective on that thing you said? And for someone who's joining a new organisation, that is invaluable. We don't simply get that with a Teams call. We come onto a call, we discuss the topic, it starts and it ends, and there's no real before and after. So we do want to try to encourage the office for more of these type of engagements, and that does take a lot of effort. It does take an amount of forward planning and change management with our management teams and departments, but I do feel that that's a good basis for succeeding moving forwards. This was a terrific bit of research created by Leesman for the Government Property Agency. It's a couple of years old now, but I think it will stand the test of time in terms of home working and the UK civil service. This was a diagram that I really liked, which showed, you can see kind of on the outside here, if I zoom in, work activities. We've got individual work here, we've got collaboration work, and we've got formal meetings and conversations. And what they were trying to do with these surveys across the public sector, a number of departments were surveyed, was to understand what type of work setting best supported these activities. And so you can see here we've got a blue line, which is support at home, a white line, which is support in the office, and then you can't really see it there, but a black hash line showing the importance of those activities. And so this diagram shows quite clearly to me what type of activities are better done at home and what type of activities are better done in the office. And obviously this probably would come across as fairly obvious when you start to look into it, but you can see here that the blue line, home is much more effective at these individual focused work, thinking, creative thinking, individual routine tasks, reading, etc. But then we start to get into collaboration, where the office becomes more important, learning from others, informal social interaction, probably the biggest shift, hosting visitors, clients or customers. You're not going to do that at home, you're going to do that in the office. And looking at this view, you can see that probably 2/3 maybe of the working day could be better served at home, with 1/3 of that in the office. And that translates quite well to what we're seeing in the occupancy data around how often people are coming into the office. So if we start to unpack the typical activities we might have in our working day, we might start to change the office around what it's needed for, around less or fewer fixed assigned seating, and many more settings that look to accommodate these areas down here: collaborative work, learning from others, social interaction, unplanned and planned meetings, and hosting customers, visitors, or suppliers. And so that may mean a radical shift in terms of the actual floor plate you have, the numbers of desks versus meeting rooms. And we're starting to see a real shift in terms of that, and we'll touch upon what's going on with many of the organisations we're working with in a few moments. Okay, so just to delve into hybrid working in the public sector more specifically, what I wanted to do was to highlight some great examples we've come across over the recent past and really celebrate some of the successes we are seeing within the public sector and local authorities specifically. one of the early projects before, we called it hybrid working, it was probably just flexible working, was the Transform the Way We Work program led by the Ministry of Justice. Now, back in 2014, this was a real game changer for what could be achieved with flexible working in the public sector. The idea behind this was that there's a huge amount of properties within the Ministry of Justice portfolio, as evidenced by the map you can see there. And the idea was to unlock the use of all of these spaces. Perhaps that some locations, like a magistrates or detention centre, might have some desks and car parking, and it could be that's closer to your home compared to coming into one of the large city centre offices. And so the idea was multifaceted: to unlock people from a fixed location, to give them the IT or laptops, mobile technology to work anywhere, and to have to change policies around allowing folks to work from any of these locations and book those spaces easily. And this was seen as a real success story at the time, very forward thinking, and it's continuing today as the MOJ continues to optimise and further improve this programme. HMRC had a very slightly similar programme, but it was really around consolidation of their portfolio. So they had a very large estate, around probably over 134 buildings or so across the UK. Many of these buildings fairly old, long in the tooth, and they wanted to consolidate down to 13 regional hubs. And so you can see on the right there, the blue dots being the main former offices, if you like, that were closed, and then the large red dots being the 13 regional hubs in city centres. And this was a significant undertaking, a large amount of people involved, one of the largest workplace transformation projects certainly I've come across. And the project itself is on track to deliver over £300 million of savings by 2025. That's based upon the HMRC blog post, which is referenced at the bottom there. So not just a significant cost saving, but really improved the if you like, the experience for colleagues within HMRC. That was something that came through on a lot of the discussions in the panel. These regional hubs are seen as real collaboration centres where people want to work, they want to come in. It's a hive of activity in brand new buildings with brand new equipment and furniture. So a significant improvement to the workplace experience delivered at a much lower total cost of ownership. So another real success story that should be celebrated quite rightly, in my opinion, in terms of what's been achieved there.
The fire alarm system is about to be tested.
That's the benefit of doing a live webinar in a conference room. Hopefully you can't hear that fire alarm test.
Attention please. Attention please. Fire has been reported in the building. Please leave the building immediately by the nearest exit. The fire alarm test is now completed.
Yeah, you don't get those interruptions when you're working from home. Usually it's one of my children barging into the room. So the UK Government Hub network is something that is being championed by the Government Property Agency, where this idea of organisations working from anywhere is really being defined and executed on by the GPA very successfully. And the idea behind this is to have multiple government departments and public sector tenants share buildings. Typically, these are brand new buildings or retrofitted buildings that are vibrant places to work, and that is providing significant cost saving to those relevant departments, but providing much better buildings to the occupants and tenants there. So this programme is accelerating, and we are seeing a large number of tenants joining these hubs on an ongoing basis there. So focusing a little bit more on local authorities and some of the success on the local council level. West Berkshire successfully reduced their Newbury-based offices from 3 down to 1, and this allowed them to save a significant amount of money on the budget, nearly £250,000, by freeing up these 2 town centre offices that could be used for other purposes. With this newly refurbished remaining office, they had 3 distinct work styles for their colleagues. So the office workers are always based in the office, perhaps they have an anchor desk, they're there Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Those folks that are based more in the home, so they are based at home and they can come into the office when they need to, typically 2 days a week. And those folks that are in the community, so they are roaming around the county and they're using the office as a drop-in space, or perhaps other offices or spaces within the county. This was achieved by having a shift from fixed assigned seating to more of a desk booking concept within their relevant zones and departments. So instead of me having my desk Monday to Friday 9 to 5 for everyone and having a large amount of space to cover the amount of people that would typically work in that office, the shift was made to have more departmental based zones, neighbourhoods. I think there was people, place and community were their zones they have within floor plan. So it meant that you had the ability of booking a space when you needed it, as opposed to having it all the time. It allowed the council to reduce the amount of space they needed and therefore consolidate from 3 buildings down to 1. The feedback has been really positive. So surveys they've done post move, the overwhelming, well, the majority of staff said they're more productive, and a significant amount of staff said that their work-life balance was better. So better offices, more collaboration, more fulfillment at a lower total cost of ownership. So ticking a lot of boxes there. A similar story with the City of York, who had 3 buildings in their city campus, moving from 3 floors down to 1, through, again, establishing this idea of shared desk usage within departmental zones. So the ownership of those spaces being not on an individual level, but on more of a group and department level to a zone. This enables staff to book spaces as and when they needed them. They also introduced more collaboration type of zones and concepts. So instead of having just fixed desks and formal meeting rooms, having soft seating areas and breakout areas, workstations and another type of scrum tables and so on, so that people could have a blend of different type of work settings, not just fixed desk or formal meeting room, having a real continuum of types of work setting, so that the different types of activities could be supported with the new type of furniture and floor plan layout. This was delivered alongside policy changes around allowing staff to choose how and where they work, and management changing a lot of the policies that folks had within the council there. And again, staff surveys post-change show very high levels of satisfaction, and many colleagues commenting on the benefits of the flexibility provided them. Staffordshire County Council created the Castle House Hub prior to the pandemic. This was a project that was completed a few years before that, but was quite forward-thinking in terms of having the new building, but looking to onboard tenants within the community. And so they have Newcastle Under-Lyme Police Authority and the Borough Council staff as tenants. And so this idea of having the government hub type of approach, which the GPA championing, on a local authority level. So looking to have partner organisations in the public sector as tenants, perhaps maybe even having some private sector tenants, perhaps reducing the cost of that building and increasing the revenue potential by sharing the space accordingly. So they trialled desk booking as a new concept after positive feedback, deployed that across Castle House and other locations, What the users found quite well in these buildings was to have kiosks entry points on the floor, so they could see what spaces were free, book a desk quickly, locate colleagues. That was a key success factor for that implementation there. A couple of concepts to really highlight when we look at local authorities and hybrid working. I think that combining hybrid working with the one public estate type of approach could deliver transformational change for local authorities. It's clear that there's been a shift in how we work, and that could enable a reassessment of our office space requirements. So we may require fewer desks alongside implementing those flexible working arrangements, as we've seen with the previous examples. And with the One Public Estate programme, we could look to take these underutilised buildings and repurpose them. Perhaps we sell them, or we sell them to generate revenue and cost savings, or perhaps repurpose them for other usage. Maybe create co-working spaces for the community or other community-based hub work, as well as supporting other collaborations with other departments, for example. And so I think that the combination of these trends of new ways of working, hybrid, and one public estate can really combine to unlock significant cost savings for local authorities, increase employee satisfaction, and improve service delivery to the community as well. And one final concept is really inspired by this idea of the government hubs, GPA, the commuter hubs at HMRC and MOJ, as well as the Staffordshire County Council example of sharing space with other partner organisations to collect together the buildings that you have, share rooms, share desks, share floors, share buildings with other departments and partners to reduce cost, increase revenue, and improve workplace choices. We are seeing this trend become very successful across the NHS, where a number of NHS trusts are looking to significantly reduce admin and office space by sharing with other NHS trusts in the area, and increasingly with local authorities and district councils. This idea where one building could be shared by multiple tenants, with everyone paying their fair share of the lease and ongoing operation costs, is something that is really unlocking the potential across the public sector. And that's something that is very interesting when we look at the vast variety of assets we have within the typical local authority portfolio. And could we look to perhaps have a couple of desks in a local library or local community centres? Could we look at on the map overlaying other partner organisations, be those district councils, NHS trusts, other public sector departments, and look to engage with them proactively to say, hey, could we look to consolidate and share on that basis? And that could lead to more choice for the employees, reduce cost for the departments and local authorities. So I think that's a real potential to further optimise the portfolio on, if you like, a bit more of a macro level. Okay, so the third and final topic I'd like to cover today is really touching upon one of the key performance indicators of the hybrid workplace, and that's around occupancy and utilisation data. Why is it so important? As I said at the start, what we can measure, we can manage. And I think that the fact that people using offices is so much in flux, trying to understand what's going on is going to help inform decision making moving forwards, so that we can really right size the portfolio for what we need moving forwards. And so this research published recently by CBRE, for me, is quite interesting. As we touched upon with the 3 local authority examples, the key change that's unlocked the potential is around the desk sharing ratio. We might have one person assigned to one desk today. That should be a thing of the past. You'll see that the occupancy data is very low. Those desks will not be used anywhere near as much as what they were prior to the pandemic. And so if we increase the numbers of people that could use those spaces, we can reduce the total number of spaces required. And let me put that into a good example here. If we have one person to one desk, we require one desk for every headcount. If we increase our workforce by 10%, we need to increase our space by 10%. But if we don't factor in the utilization, we will be forever locked in terms of having this one-to-one type of ratio. And we have to embrace these new ways of working to really unlock that potential and deliver the real change to the workplace and the wider portfolio. And so when we look at these KPIs or key performance indicators, we will know perhaps how much the building costs us per person or per seat. We might know the density per seat per square meter or square foot. We might have vacancy. We might have an idea of reservations rate. But for me personally, the utilization rate is the most important. And so we can see here from this recent research that the slightly lighter bar here for utilization, 28% in 2021, utilization has dropped to 21% in 2022. And so we're seeing that actually utilization is perhaps coming down from where it was only in 2021. I should say if we took a longer term picture, we would see the utilization as being almost less than half of what it was prior to the pandemic. That's certainly the data that we see. And understanding these utilization rates can allow us to benchmark, to forecast, to remodel how much space we need moving forwards and what type of changes could we make to our workplace strategy. This is a great example of the varied nature of utilization. This is from some of the data we have across our customers. The typical working week, you can see that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday trend there. Now you can see that, the peaks being, typically kind of there's the lunch break, the McDonald's M, if you like, everyone goes out to lunch there and then comes back. The peak being about 1 or 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, similar 2 to 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, and then Thursday probably about 10 or 11 a.m. and then 2 p.m. They're the peaks of utilization. So it's very important to understand the peak because we want everyone to have or get a space when they need one. We can't have people coming in and not finding a space. That's not good. But at the same time, we have a huge amount of spare capacity. So you see that across our customers generally, you can see that this peak is still only, what's that, about almost 65, 70% of the total at its peak. You can see that on the Friday, the peak there is roughly only just above 20%. And so we can see that Friday, the peak is less than half of the other days. And so there is a huge amount of change between one day to the other. There'll be a change between one department and the other. And so the more that we can cut and dice this view, the better we can understand how we're using the space, and we can start to load balance the office. Encourage departments to come in on other days. Perhaps look to incentivize people to use the space on a Friday or a Monday. Try to understand what departments and teams need more space and which ones need less space. And so utilization is much more sporadic now. We want to try to capture that real time all the time so we can start to make these informed decisions. And flex is creating a series of flux, if you like. And this was a report we created for one of our customers. It's very interesting to see the differences between the different days. And you can see here, this is actually showing attendance data, looking at badge swipes into the building, comparing that to what was booked, planned versus actual. And you can see here that on these days here, on the 7th of June, and on the, what's that, the 14th of June, if everyone had come in that was expected to, we would have been 50% over capacity. So in fact, these days were very, very busy indeed. And if everyone had come in that were intended to, we'd have been absolutely wall to wall with people. That has implications on health and safety, on compliance, but also well-being. You know, if someone's coming to the office and there is nowhere to sit and everywhere is ramped up, that's not good either. So we've got to try to get that sweet spot of having enough space for everyone when they need it at the peak, trying to load balance across the week, but also not having or having enough space when people need it. And the occupancy data gives us this information, this insight that we need to make those type of decisions there. That data can be captured through a number of different ways. You know, badge swipes into the building gives us an idea of how many people are in. Doesn't tell us what space they're using once they're in the building, of course, but that's where things like visual observations or walkthroughs can do that. That's manual. That's not something that can be done all the time. And that's where technology comes in, occupancy sensors, people counters in rooms, to give us an understanding of what spaces are being used real time all of the time. And we're starting to see that technology be deployed across the public sector, where it's enabling the capture of this information so that we can rationalize this, understand it, and then act on it. And this has another advantage as well. If we have these type of sensors, an example you see at the bottom there, a battery powered sensor under the desk, all it does, it simply detects whether there's heat and movement there. It doesn't know who's at the desk, doesn't care. All it knows is that there is a human being in the vicinity of this space. So that could be placed under the desk, under a table. We might have people counters in the ceiling. And if we provide that information real time to users, they can then just find a free seat. So this is a concept that is starting to be deployed a little bit more by some early adopters. This idea that some desks and some rooms are bookable, but maybe we've got some spaces that are completely free seating, collaboration, soft seating areas, phone booths, for example. We want people to be able to find a free space, use it. The sensor detects someone is using it. It stops glowing green, starts glowing red on the digital signage and the other interfaces that users have, so that they can get about their day quickly and easily. And we're starting to see some early adopters look to use this technology to change how the office is used when we enter it. So we've covered quite a lot of concepts this morning. Hopefully that's been useful for yourselves. Just to summarize, really, we are seeing 3 opportunities for local authorities to unlock potential in their property, estates and workplace. The hybrid working and new ways of working is presenting a real opportunity to change how we use our spaces, to rethink what type of offices we need, and to act accordingly on that. The use of shared spaces and public sector hubs, I think, represents a real potential change to local authorities. Perhaps we are looking to share space with other public sector tenants, NHS trusts and so on. And so reducing our cost, increasing our revenue potential. And coupled with one public estate, we can take a holistic view of the portfolio and understand, do we have the right type of spaces in the right places? Could we perhaps recycle spaces? Could we sell them? Could we remodel them? Could we give them back to the community? And so we could look to take this view and really seize the initiative across the portfolio there. So yeah, very delighted to share these concepts with you this morning. So I'm now going to take a pause, and if you've got any questions, please post them into the chat, and give me a chance to catch my breath and have a quick sip of water. So please do post any questions you have. Anisha, are you there? Would you be able to read out any questions we've got from the audience, please?
Yeah, of course. I'll just have a quick look to see if there's any coming in. Oh, amazing. The first question is, do you work with sensors to provide occupancy data? I know you've obviously just mentioned that, but how basically maybe the data is able to be used, maybe?
A very good question. Yes, so we are agnostic, if you like, to what type of sensors. We want to consume the data wherever it may come from. So when I say sensors, it really could be other sources of information as well. We want to consume, for example, access control data. We want to consume sensors that might be under the desks or in the ceiling. We want to consume data from people counters and room counters and other types of entry points. So we're very much agnostic to what type of sensor. Of course, we could look to advise the right type of sensor based upon your requirement. And so we've got many of our customers who have the passive infrared sensor, the battery powered one under the desk. That's quite a robust technology. The batteries last for 5 years. They communicate wirelessly to the cloud and tell us whether someone is sitting at the seat or not. Similarly, there's sensors you can have battery powered or wired that could be in the ceiling. One sensor can count maybe 6 or 8 seats underneath it. There could be 6 or 8 desks or 6 or 8 seats in a meeting room. So we're very much agnostic to the type of sensor. If you've got existing sensors already, we'd like to hear from you. We want to consume that data. We're not looking to replace anything. If you've got sensors in situ, we will leverage that and try to pull that into the system to give you that view of what was planned and what actually happened. And that's really the value we want to provide. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Thank you for asking it.
Amazing. We've got a couple more. Can I get a copy of the slides, or where will the slides be available?
Yes, absolutely. We'll make sure we send those around to everyone. You see that I've linked a lot of research as well. So if we can also look to try to provide you with these documents too. I think there's a wealth of information there. So we'll share the slides with you and either provide you with links to the documents or perhaps provide you the documents themselves for a lot of the research that we've quoted from in this session. So absolutely, yes.
Another question. I'm aware that Matrix Booking works with the GPA and others in supporting sharing of office space. Can you tell me how we could use this to our advantage?
Yeah, very good question. So it could be that you are a department that's looking to onboard onto one of the shared hubs. I think the approach would be to get in touch with the GPA directly, where there might be a hub in your area, where you could be onboarded as a tenant. And the GPA are looking to have hubs across the UK. The most recent ones, I think, being Darlington and Peterborough, for example. So, if you've got offices in the vicinity of one of these hubs, many other public sector organisations are onboarding themselves as tenants with the GPA, alongside exiting their existing buildings, or maybe complementing the hub with their existing buildings too. Likewise, HMRC and other if you've got hub operators are doing a similar thing there as well. So I think that the best bet would be to speak with the GPA to see what options are available there. But equally, as I said, on a more local authority level, around perhaps creating your own hub, much like what Staffordshire did with district councils and blue lights departments in their county. Engage with them. Is there a sharing potential with the local police and fire brigade, or local NHS trust, or other public sector departments? And so I think that for sure, approaching GPA is one option, but equally taking that hub mentality on the local authority level absolutely is a potential option as well.
Just got a couple more, I think 2 more I can see. If there's any more, just pop them in the chat and I'll be able to read them out for Joe. Is it possible to get a demonstration or a demo of your software for our company?
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, I've spoken today a lot about obviously what we're seeing in the markets, particularly from a local authority level, but absolutely we can have a session to explore what the technology can do, whether that's a demo or even a free trial of the product as well. So get in touch with our team, and we'd be happy to set that up, of course.
Amazing. And how do you use matrix booking to gain insights into how buildings are being used? I guess a bit more on the occupancy or.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think that getting that insight, it's very important to have a number of sources of information, so that the more sources you have, the more accurate it can become. We'll never get to a point where we know 100% of what's going on in the building. I mean, to get that, you have to have, you know, almost like those Bluetooth collars you might have on a dog to know where they are in the building. We're never going to get to that. So you're never going to understand 100% of what is going on in the building, but we can start to look at multiple sources to filter up and gain that knowledge and understanding. Starting, for example, with access control, gives us a very basic level of how many people are in the building. Often it's not a perfect solution because you might have an understanding of who's come into the building. Unless they're swiping out, you won't know what the peak occupancy was. Because if people swipe in, but they just walk out the door through turnstiles, you're never going to know when the peak was. You might look to have obviously a booking system which can tell you, someone's booked in for an in-person interaction and they have checked in to the location and verified that that's been used. So that's give you an understanding of occupancy. But perhaps they've booked a desk, used it for an hour, and then gone into a meeting room. So that's where the occupancy sensor would perhaps give you an idea that the utilization of that desk was for an hour, and then it was not used the rest of the day. And perhaps then the meeting rooms are more in use there. So that's where really technology sensors, for example, can give us a bit better understanding of what's actually going on within the building there as well. So obviously, the more type of layers we have in terms of occupancy data, the better we can manage that accordingly.
I believe that is all the questions I can see on the Q&A part. However, if you have any more questions, obviously you can contact Joe or I, and we'll be happy to help.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alicia. And I think that we are right on time, which is great. Last thing to say is just thank you very much for your time this morning. Hope it's been very interesting. As I say, we're seeing a huge amount of change within public sector workplace, and we've been delighted to have such an interactive set of panel discussions across the last 18 months. We really will be continuing this. So keep a lookout for events near you. I think the next event, well, you'll be able to find it on the website exactly. I won't say the exact date because I can't recall it myself. But I think the next event's going to be in Manchester in September, I believe, where we'll be having another panel similar to what we've done previously. So please do keep a lookout for the next event. It'd be great to meet you in person. We're always looking for panelists as well, I should say. So a recruitment drive, if you've got a perspective, we would love to hear from what you think from your organisation's perspective. So please do get in touch with us. We want to be a panelist at one of these Public Sector Connect events. We'll be delighted to hear from you. The more the merrier, the more we learn, and the more we will learn together as well.